Most men go through life believing that women are an unsolvable mystery. But what if that belief is exactly what's keeping you confused, frustrated, and always one step behind? The truth is, while women can be emotionally complex and socially nuanced, they're not unreadable. Beneath the surface, there are consistent emotional patterns, vulnerabilities, blind spots, and internal contradictions that very few men ever learn to recognize. And those who do, they navigate relationships with quiet confidence and total clarity. This isn't about manipulation. It's about mastery, emotional intelligence, stoic awareness. While the average man stumbles through trial and error, trying to impress, chasing validation, or overanalyzing mixed signals, you'll be calm, focused, and 5 steps ahead. Because when you understand the subtle triggers and hidden drives behind female behavior, everything changes. The guesswork disappears, the power dynamics shift, and most importantly, you stop being played. In this video, we're going deep into 9 key emotional weaknesses that every man needs to understand, not to exploit, but to evolve. These insights will challenge everything you thought you knew about attraction, relationships, and control. Some may surprise you, others may hit close to home. But one thing is certain: by the end of this video, you'll never look at female behavior the same way again. If you're ready to stop reacting and start leading with strength and clarity, make sure you subscribe right now. Because this isn't about becoming the perfect gentleman. It's about becoming the grounded, unshakable man no woman can ignore. Let's get started. Number 1. Confidence that doesn't ask for permission. One of the most misunderstood dynamics in attraction is this: true power doesn't beg, broadcast, or boast. It simply exists. Most men spend years chasing women, not realizing they're repelling them with every anxious word, every over-explained intention, every subtle plea for validation. What actually pulls a woman in isn't your resume, your charm, or how much attention you give her. It's your stillness, your rootedness, your inner certainty. Modern psychology confirms what Stoic philosophy knew long ago: people subconsciously mirror the emotional energy in the room. So when you show up, radiating insecurity or desperation, no matter how well hidden, you shift the entire interaction. She may not even be able to explain it, but something will feel off. On the other hand, when your presence speaks louder than your words, when your confidence isn't something you try to perform, but something you simply are, you disarm her defenses without even trying. This kind of confidence doesn't ask for permission to exist. It doesn't fidget when things get quiet. It doesn't fall apart when she tests your boundaries or pulls away. And it certainly doesn't need constant reassurance to feel valid. This is where most men fail. They talk too much, try too hard, offer too much too soon, mistaking approval for connection. But a woman doesn't fall for the man who seeks her approval. She's drawn to the one who doesn't need it. Stoicism teaches you to hold your frame to withstand the emotional storms without flinching. It's not about ignoring her or being emotionally distant. It's about being unmoved by superficial tests, because your self-worth isn't up for negotiation. What she truly seeks isn't a man who dominates, but one who anchors. Not someone who tries to fix her storms, but someone who doesn't drown in them. When you sit with discomfort without scrambling for comfort, when you stay solid without becoming cold, you become unforgettable, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. That's the energy that doesn't chase or persuade, it invites. And once she experiences that, she won't want to let go. Confidence isn't noise. It's a quiet force. A man who owns his ground doesn't need to shout it. His presence says it all. Number 2. Being understood without explaining everything. There comes a time in every woman's life, especially those who've endured more than they've ever shared, when silence becomes her shield. Not because she's emotionless, but because she's tired. Tired of repeating herself. Tired of translating her feelings to people who were never truly listening. She doesn't stop speaking because she has nothing left to say. She stops because her words have too often fallen into the void, misread, minimized, or mistaken for weakness. This is the quiet exhaustion that builds over years of carrying unseen burdens. And many men miss it, not because they don't care, but because they're distracted by their own discomfort. Instead of being present, they scramble for solutions, offer hollow advice, or change the subject altogether. They don't mean harm, but their need to do overshadows the deeper need to simply be there. But the rare man who can slow down, who can sense the shift in her energy without demanding an explanation, he becomes something entirely different in her life. He becomes a refuge. He doesn't interrupt her quiet. He respects it. He doesn't interpret her silence as distance, but as depth. And in doing so, he earns something far more valuable than attention. He earns her trust. I once met a woman who had lived through divorce grief and decades of emotional neglect. She told me the moment she felt truly loved again wasn't during a candlelit dinner or a heartfelt confession. It was the evening a man looked at her across a crowded room, saw the heaviness in her expression, and simply walked over, no questions, no solutions, and sat quietly beside her. His presence said what words couldn't. You're not alone. This is what Stoic wisdom calls attentive awareness, a kind of deep perception that doesn't rush to interpret or fix, but quietly recognizes. It's the kind of masculine energy that doesn't overpower, but supports. It doesn't press for answers. It simply holds space. Because sometimes what a woman needs most isn't someone who solves her problems. It's someone who validates her experience by staying present through the storm. The modern world is filled with noise. Everyone talks. Few people listen. And even fewer truly see. But the man who learns to perceive without pressing, to understand without dissecting, becomes unforgettable, not because of how much he says, but because of how deeply he gets her without demanding a script. If you want to unlock one of the most powerful emotional responses in a woman, don't try to impress her. Instead, show her that she doesn't have to constantly explain herself to be felt. Because in the end, true connection isn't about decoding every word. It's about recognizing the meaning behind the silence and choosing to stay anyway. Number 3, masculine silence in the right moments. There's a silence that creates distance, and there's a silence that builds gravity. One pushes people away with cold withdrawal, a deliberate void meant to wound or control. But the other kind, the rare kind, emerges from a man who is rooted, disciplined, and emotionally secure. That kind of silence doesn't feel empty. It feels anchored, and it speaks louder than any argument ever could. Too many men, when faced with emotional tension, fall into a trap. They feel pressure to explain, to fix, to justify, to say something, anything to regain control. They believe that more words will bring clarity, or that emotional noise will demonstrate strength. But the truth is, reactive speech is almost always the mark of internal chaos. When you talk too much out of panic, you're showing your hand, and not in a good way. Women sense this more sharply than most men realize. Often, not through logic, but through instinct. They feel the tremble beneath your tone. They notice when your silence is coated in avoidance or insecurity. But when your stillness is intentional, When you hold yourself back with clarity, not confusion, that sends a message she can't ignore. A man who remains composed when tested isn't passive. He's powerful. He's demonstrating mastery over his impulses, which is far more impressive than dominance over a conversation. He understands that silence, when chosen deliberately, is a declaration: I don't need to match your chaos to maintain my presence. As Marcus Aurelius taught, the mind is your domain, not the emotions of others, not the drama they bring. When you truly grasp that you stop fighting for control outside yourself, you begin to understand that calm under pressure is not just a tactic, it's a way of being. So when the moment heats up, when she's emotional, when a conversation veers into manipulation, or when you're being tested, the strongest move is often no move at all. You stay, you breathe, you observe. You choose your response, not from ego, but from grounded awareness. That restraint, that pause, that unwavering stillness, it doesn't make you invisible. It makes you unforgettable. Seneca once said that silence, when timely, is more valuable than gold. In today's world, filled with emotional overreactions and endless noise, a man who knows when to not speak becomes a rare presence. He commands not by volume, but by gravity. His silence is not absence, it's strength made visible. So if you want to embody true masculinity, stop confusing reaction with leadership. Stop thinking that you need to win every verbal exchange to win her respect. What she feels in your stillness, when your energy doesn't flinch under pressure, is far more potent than anything you could say. Peace is not something you argue for. It's something you become. And sometimes that begins with holding your ground in total silence. Number 4, deep eye contact that doesn't flinch. In a world dominated by screens, distractions, and constant movement, the ability to hold someone's gaze truly and fully is becoming a lost skill. But when a man looks another person in the eye and refuses to flinch, something ancient comes alive. There's no performance, no posturing, just raw, grounded presence. And that kind of presence doesn't need to announce itself. It radiates a confidence that words can't replicate. This isn't about the casual eye contact you make in passing or during surface-level conversations. We're talking about the kind of eye contact that lingers just long enough to reveal something deeper, the kind that doesn't look away when things get emotionally charged. That fraction of a second when others break the gaze is where your presence is tested, and most men fail that test. True sustained eye contact is not about intimidation. It's about steadiness. It's the visual expression of emotional maturity. A man who can meet another's gaze, or a woman's, without shifting uncomfortably, without scrambling for the right thing to say, is a man who has come to peace with himself. He's not looking to prove, persuade, or perform. He's simply there and fully present. I once met a man at a small military storytelling event. A former special operations officer well into his 70s, he barely spoke, but you couldn't ignore him. While others tried to impress with stories or humor, he simply sat. When someone spoke to him, he didn't rush to answer. He looked deeply and calmly, as if weighing your words with his entire presence. That pause, that gaze, was more commanding than any speech in the room. He didn't need to take space. His presence was the space. This is what Stoic philosophy reminds us. Strength is less about action and more about containment. The ability to observe rather than react, to see rather than scramble, to hold your internal center no matter what's happening externally. When a woman looks into your eyes, even for just a moment, she reads more than you think. She notices the slight tension if you're unsure of yourself. She feels the discomfort if you're trying too hard. She senses whether your gaze is a mask or a mirror. But if you can look at her with calm clarity, with no agenda, no hidden need for approval, she will feel something rare: safety without pressure, presence without performance. That kind of gaze doesn't say, "Look at me." It says, "I see you, and I'm not going anywhere." It's not about seduction. It's about stability. It communicates without a single word. I am grounded. I am not chasing. I am simply here. In a culture where most men either stare too long out of neediness or glance away too quickly out of fear, the one who can maintain eye contact with peace and composure becomes unforgettable. Not because he says something clever, but because in his stillness, he reminds her what real strength feels like. Number 5. The need for mysterious depth. One of the most overlooked truths in human connection is this: we are drawn, not to what is loud, but to what is layered. Psychology confirms what ancient wisdom has long known: people are more captivated by those who unfold slowly, who reveal their essence through time and intentionality, not all at once. Not because they're playing games, but because there's something compelling about a person who doesn't need to spill everything just to be seen. In today's world of instant bios, constant updates, and emotional oversharing, the man who chooses to keep something of himself reserved becomes rare and powerful. He doesn't withdraw. He doesn't play hard to get. But he also doesn't treat every interaction like a confessional. His mystery isn't about being distant. It's about being dimensional. Unfortunately, many men misunderstand this entirely. They think mystery is about withholding affection, dodging vulnerability, or responding with ambiguity. But that's not depth. It's avoidance with a better suit. Real mystery isn't crafted through confusion. It emerges from substance, from a man who's walked through enough of life to no longer need to be instantly understood. A Stoic man doesn't perform to impress. He doesn't over-explain to be validated. His calm presence says more than 100 explanations ever could. He's not trying to prove anything. He just is. That's what women feel, but can't always describe the sensation that this man isn't hiding something. He's simply too rooted to be rattled. Women aren't drawn to vanishing acts or emotionally unavailable boys dressed as men. They're drawn to someone who feels like a slow-burning book, chapters unfolding at the right pace. A man whose soul doesn't rush to be consumed in a single sitting. One who can sit in silence without discomfort, speak with meaning rather than noise, and reveal just enough to invite curiosity without collapsing into oversharing. This is what the Stoics called self-containment. It's not coldness, it's control. It's the deliberate choice to preserve your energy and only give what's aligned with who you are, not to withhold connection, but to ensure it's earned. When you lead with this kind of depth, something shifts. Your words begin to carry more weight. Your silences become intentional. Your presence feels rare because it is. You stop trying to be figured out and start becoming someone worth discovering. If you've been giving too much too soon, hoping to be seen or understood, pause. Breathe. Step back into yourself. Let people earn the right to know your story, not as a performance, but as a privilege. Because real mystery isn't about making others chase you. It's about becoming so whole that they want to come closer without you needing to say a word. Number 6. Her soft spot for a man with purpose, not just passion. There's a quote from Epictetus that grows heavier with meaning the longer you live. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In your 20s, that might sound poetic. In your 30s and beyond, it becomes a quiet test of who you truly are. Because at some point, the noise fades. The adrenaline of big dreams, the heat of raw ambition, the hunger to be seen at all starts to lose its grip, unless it's anchored in something deeper. Passion on its own is flashy. It burns hot. It grabs attention. But if there's no direction behind it, no structure beneath it, it eventually collapses into frustration. And here's where many men misunderstand what truly captivates a woman. They believe being loud, excited, and endlessly driven will hold her attention. And maybe it will for a while. But what makes her stay isn't how high you can jump. It's how firmly you can stand. Passion is emotional fuel. But purpose, that's the engine. That's the framework that keeps everything together when the excitement fades and real life begins. Most men talk about their dreams. Fewer walk with daily discipline towards something that actually matters. The man who knows where he's going, and why not just for applause, not to impress her, but because he's guided by an internal compass, is the man she trusts with more than her attention. She trusts him with her respect. Stoicism isn't about suppressing passion. It's about channeling it into something lasting. The Stoic man doesn't get caught in the chase for approval or external affirmation. He wakes up asking, "What's mine to do today?" Not who will notice, but what needs doing. His actions don't depend on who's watching. That's what separates him. He's steady. He's reliable. He's on mission. And that's what reaches her in ways she can't always explain. Women are perceptive, not just to words, but to movement. And when your energy is anchored in something real, she can feel it. It shows up in the way you walk into a room, the way you handle conflict, the way you're not swayed by approval or rejection. You're not performing. You're building, with or without an audience. The paradox is this: the more you stop chasing validation, the more magnetic you become. When your life has direction, when your effort is aimed, when your energy is disciplined, you don't have to convince anyone of your value. You become the message, and that presence, that clarity, is far more attractive than any speech about your goals. So if you've been mistaking intensity for impact, if you've been running hard without asking why, pause. Refocus. Ask yourself, what am I creating that would still matter if no one clapped? That's your purpose. That's your power. That's what she's truly searching for, even if she's never said it out loud. Type it below. I move with purpose. And this time, don't just say it. Live it. Number 7. Her hidden yearning to be led without being controlled. Not long ago, I witnessed a moment that redefined leadership for me. It didn't involve authority commands or raised voices. It was something quieter, subtler, and far more powerful. At a small countryside train station, I noticed an older couple waiting on a bench. She was clearly distressed, her voice tense, her gestures quick, her emotions just below the surface. The kind of stress that's more than just a delayed train, the kind that's been quietly building. The man, perhaps in his 70s, didn't flinch. He didn't interrupt or attempt to calm her down with logic. He didn't offer advice or demand she relax. Instead, he simply stood, took the heavy bag from her shoulder, looked her in the eyes with quiet steadiness, and sat back down beside her. No grand gestures, no explanations, just presence. And in that small moment, everything shifted. Her shoulders relaxed, her voice softened. She took a breath that seemed like the first real one in hours. That wasn't control. That was leadership. That was direction without domination. And more importantly, it was trust built not through words, but through unwavering calm. Most men today misunderstand what women truly long for in a partner. It's not to be ordered around. It's not to be silenced or overshadowed. It's the opposite. It's a craving to rest, to breathe, to not have to constantly hold the entire emotional weight of a relationship or of life itself. Many women have spent years, even decades, being the rock, the planner, the one who keeps everything from falling apart. And while they've grown strong through necessity, deep down they still long for something softer, the strength of a man who knows how to lead, not by overpowering, but by anchoring. Real masculine leadership shows up when the emotional temperature rises and you don't. When things feel chaotic and you stay grounded. When she's spinning in her thoughts and you become the calm she can return to, not because you're trying to fix her, but because you don't need her storm to shake your structure. Leadership in this sense is about creating emotional safety. It's about being the one who doesn't react to every trigger, who doesn't argue every point, who doesn't flinch when things get uncomfortable. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be the one who doesn't disappear. The Stoic man understands this well. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't lead with force. He leads by example through poise, through clarity, through the simple power of being consistent when everything else feels uncertain. So when I say women yearn to be led, it's not about control. It's about confidence. It's about knowing she can rest in your presence without losing herself. That you won't collapse under pressure or expect her to carry the emotional weight for both of you. If that hits something real in you, type it in the comments. I lead through calm. But more importantly, start becoming that man. Because when you lead this way without ego, without performance, you don't just become attractive. You become unforgettable. And what comes next? It's quieter than leadership, but even more magnetic. Stay with me. Number 8. Her vulnerability to words that paint new worlds. Here's something backed by science, not speculation. Research in cognitive neuroscience reveals that women not only remember emotionally rich language more vividly than neutral words, but they feel it more deeply too. This isn't about manipulation. It's about resonance. It's about the invisible threads that connect thought language and emotion and how they echo long after a conversation ends. Most men underestimate this completely. They believe communication is just about information. Say the right thing. Don't say the wrong thing. Keep it brief or make her laugh. But what they miss is that women experience words differently. Words aren't just sounds. They're invitations, possibilities, triggers for emotional landscapes that can either open her or shut her down. But let's be clear. This isn't about smooth talk or memorized lines. You don't need to be poetic. You don't need to impress. In fact, trying too hard usually backfires. What matters isn't your vocabulary, it's your presence. It's the intention behind your words. A man who is grounded in himself, who speaks slowly and with clarity, can touch her heart in ways no charm ever could. Real communication, the kind that makes her lean in instead of drift away, comes from alignment. When your words are an extension of your integrity, not a tool for performance. When you speak because you're present, not because you're trying to fill space. That's when something shifts. That's when she starts listening, not just with her ears, but with her whole nervous system. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Now take that a step further. When you speak with awareness and insight, her internal world begins to absorb those colors. Your language leaves impressions. It doesn't just land, it lingers. And this is where Stoic practice becomes so powerful. A Stoic man doesn't waste words. He doesn't talk for attention. He speaks to build, to illuminate, to connect. His presence infuses even simple sentences with gravity, because he knows that every word is a brushstroke on the canvas of her experience. So ask yourself this: when you speak to a woman, are you just creating noise? Or are you shaping meaning? Are you echoing cliches? Or revealing layers of your truth, gently inviting hers forward? Because here's the secret: women don't remember the man who said the most. They remember the man who made them feel the most often, with just a few words delivered with calm and intention. If that resonates, type it below. I speak with vision. And get ready, because what comes next makes even your best words feel quiet in comparison. Number 9. The unspoken need for a man who can walk away. Let me tell you about a man named Raymond, a former firefighter in his early 60s, who I met at a quiet little coffee shop near a coastal town. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but the moment he walked in, the energy in the room shifted. He didn't demand attention. He commanded it without a single word. There was something in the way he carried himself: relaxed shoulders, calm eyes, and the kind of presence that made people instinctively sit up straighter. As we spoke, he told me about a woman named Elise, a strong, self-made woman who had been through enough in life to no longer tolerate pretense. She was sharp-driven and not easily impressed. But when she was around Raymond, something softened in her. Not because he chased her or tried to win her over, but because he didn't need her approval to stay grounded. He never tried to outtalk her storms. He didn't play therapist. He simply stayed rooted. He gave her space to unravel without stepping in to fix it. And slowly, she stopped bracing for impact. She stopped needing to defend herself. She began to relax, not because he asked her to, but because he embodied safety. His presence said everything his words didn't. I don't need to control you, but I will not lose myself to keep you either. And that's the part most men miss. A woman doesn't truly trust a man who needs her to feel whole. She might enjoy his attention, appreciate his charm, but she respects deeply the man who is willing to walk away if it ever costs him his integrity. Not out of coldness, but out of clarity. Not out of pride, but because his self-worth isn't dependent on anyone's validation. True emotional leadership, the kind that melts a woman's defenses, comes from a man who can hold steady when she's testing boundaries, throwing words, or retreating into old patterns. And instead of panicking or pushing, he remains calm, not because he's detached, but because he's mastered the art of not abandoning himself. Stoicism teaches exactly this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That begins when you stop needing to be chosen and start choosing yourself quietly, consistently. You don't win her heart by proving your worth. You earn her softness by showing moment by moment that you won't chase her chaos, compete with her fears, or crumble when tension rises. You show her that your peace isn't negotiable, that your identity isn't borrowed from her opinion of you, and that if needed, you would walk gracefully with love, but with your dignity intact. That kind of man doesn't have to say, "You can trust me." She feels it in how he sits, how he listens, and how he never loses himself in the fire. So if this resonates with you, type it below. I create space without losing self. Not just to say it, but to become it. Because in the end, the most magnetic man is the one who leads without force, stays without fear, and leaves, if he must, without resentment. Let's not pretend otherwise. If you've made it this far, you already know something has shifted. You're done shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. You're no longer chasing validation or asking for permission to be who you are. You've stopped trying to impress with noise and started showing up with presence. This wasn't just about recognizing her emotional patterns. It was about seeing where you've been leaking your own power. Through over-explaining, through people-pleasing, through trying too hard to be liked instead of being real. That ends now. Rewatch this. Not just to hear the words, but to let them cut through the layers that need to fall away. Let them confront you. Let them challenge you. And then step forward as the man who holds his line, not with aggression, but with quiet certainty. If it felt uncomfortable, good. That's not weakness. That's awareness. And awareness is always the first sign of transformation. If you're ready to stop being just another forgettable face in the crowd, subscribe. This space is built for men who choose substance over noise, who grow without needing to be seen, who don't shout to be heard because their energy speaks for them. Say less, stand taller, and remember, her storm only has power when it shakes you. When you stay calm, rooted, and unmoved, that's when everything changes.